Naomi Brooks was the kind of girl people ignored until they needed something. She was only 19, but her eyes already carried the tiredness of someone who had been fighting life for too long. She lived in Cedar Heights, a South Side neighborhood where the streets were cracked, the rent was always late, and hope was something you held with two hands so it wouldn't slip away. That morning, the sun was already bright. Not the soft, pretty kind of bright. This one felt hot and heavy, like it was sitting on people's backs. Naomi pushed her small cart down the sidewalk, the wheels squeaking like they were complaining too. Inside the cooler were ice waters and a few homemade lemonades she had mixed the night before. Her hands were cold from the melting ice, but her throat was dry because she hadn't eaten. She wasn't selling because she liked it. She was selling because Marquise Carter needed to stay in school. Marquise was 18, tall, quiet, and brilliant. The kind of boy teachers called gifted. The kind of boy who could answer questions without raising his voice. The kind of boy who could change his whole family's story, if life didn't block him first, and life had been blocking him. When Naomi reached the bus stop, she called out like she always did. "Ice water, cold water, lemonade." A construction worker bought two. A mother bought one for her little boy. Naomi smiled and thanked them, counting every dollar like it was sacred, because every dollar had a destination. At that same moment, Marquise was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at his uniform like it was a problem he couldn't solve. His mother, Denise Carter, stood near the door with red eyes and a shaking voice. Denise cleaned houses for rich people across town, but no matter how many floors she scrubbed, the money never stayed long. "They said if we don't pay by Friday, you're out," Denise whispered. Marquise didn't respond at first. He just tightened his jaw. The kind of silence that comes when a person is trying not to break. "It's okay, Ma," he finally said, but his voice sounded like he didn't even believe himself. "Maybe I can work full-time. School can wait." Denise shook her head fast. "No, don't say that. You're not meant to stop." But in Cedar Heights, being meant for something didn't always mean you would reach it. Later that afternoon, Naomi walked into the small church on the corner, New Hope Chapel, with her cooler still sweating ice water. It wasn't Sunday, so the place was quiet. Only Pastor Elijah Grant was there, arranging chairs and humming an old gospel song. He looked up when Naomi entered and sighed softly, the way older people sigh when they recognize a burden. "Naomi," he said gently, "you look like you've been carrying the whole world again." Naomi tried to smile. "I'm fine, Pastor." Pastor Grant stepped closer. "Fine is what people say when they don't want anyone to see them bleeding." Naomi swallowed. Her eyes watered, but she refused to let the tears fall. "Marquise might get put out of school," she said, barely above a whisper. "His mom is trying, but it's not enough." Pastor Grant nodded slowly, like he already knew. "And you've decided to become the answer." Naomi's shoulders dropped. He's different. He's smart. He can make it out. Her voice broke. "I just don't want him to end up stuck here like everybody else." Pastor Grant held her hands, cold and wet from ice. "Naomi, sacrifice is holy," he said, "but promise me something." Naomi looked up. "Don't let your kindness turn you into a candle that burns itself out to keep everyone else warm." Naomi nodded, but her heart had already made a decision. She wasn't thinking about herself right now. She was thinking about Friday, about the deadline, about the letter that could come home saying, Marquise was no longer a student. That evening, Naomi stood outside her small apartment, counting the money she had made, small bills, a few coins, then wrapped it carefully in tissue like it was more valuable than gold. Across town, Marquise stared at the ceiling, pretending he wasn't scared, and Naomi whispered a prayer into the night air. God, let him finish. The following morning, Naomi Brooks woke up with her jaw tight and her stomach empty, but her hands were steady. Last night's prayer was still sitting in her chest, like a small flame. God, let him finish. She counted the money again under the weak kitchen light. Small bills, coins, everything she had scraped together from ice water sales and lemonade tips. It wasn't pretty money, but it was honest money. Outside, Cedar Heights was already loud. Cars coughing smoke, people rushing to work, and heat rising early like trouble. Naomi pushed her cart towards Cedar Heights High, her cooler packed with ice and hope. Marquise Carter was already at school when she arrived. He stood near the front steps, his backpack on one shoulder, eyes scanning the parking lot like he was waiting for bad news. He hadn't slept much. That warning, next missed payment, you're out, kept replaying in his head like a cruel song. Naomi spotted him and lifted a hand. "You good?" she asked softly. Marquise nodded too fast. "Yeah, I'm good." But his voice didn't sound good. Naomi didn't waste time talking. She headed straight for the office, the little scarf of money held tight in her palm. The hallway smelled like floor wax and old papers. When she reached the bursar's window, the woman behind the glass looked up slowly. Her name was Ms. Tisdale, and she was the kind of staff member who acted like her desk gave her power over people's lives. Her lips pressed into a thin line as her eyes dropped to Naomi's cart outside, then back to Naomi's face. "What do you want?" Ms. Tisdale asked, already sounding annoyed. Naomi cleared her throat. "I'm here to pay on Marquise Carter's balance, just a part of it today." Ms. Tisdale's eyebrows jumped. "You?" she repeated, loud enough for the waiting area to turn quiet. Parents and students looked over. Naomi swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." Ms. Tisdale took the scarf of money like it was something dirty. She untied it and stared at the mix of coins and small bills. Then she laughed, sharp, ugly. "You think this is a bank?" she said loudly. "Ice water money? This is what you brought to handle tuition?" The room shifted. A couple people snickered. Naomi's face burned, but she stayed still. "It's money," she said quietly. "It's what I have." Ms. Tisdale leaned back in her chair like she was enjoying it. "Next time, bring a card, or bring an adult, because this," she tapped the coins, "is embarrassing." Naomi's eyes stung, but she refused to cry in that office. And then, right behind her, Marquise's voice cut through the air. "What's going on?" he asked. Naomi turned slowly. Marquise had walked in at the worst moment. His eyes landed on the coins spread out like shame on the counter. His shoulders lifted, stiff with humiliation. Naomi saw it instantly. The pride inside him, the pain, the way his jaw clenched as if he wanted to disappear. Before Naomi could speak, a tall man stepped into the office from the hallway. His name was Mr. Raymond Whitaker, one of Marquise's teachers, a serious, respected educator who believed Marquise had a future bigger than Cedar Heights. Mr. Whitaker's eyes narrowed when he saw what was happening. "Ms. Tisdale," he said firmly, "that is enough." Ms. Tisdale blinked. "I'm just doing my job." "No," Mr. Whitaker replied. "You're humiliating a student and someone trying to help him. Take the payment. Record it properly." The room went quiet in a different way now, like someone had flipped the power. Ms. Tisdale's mouth tightened, but she grabbed the receipt book and stamped it hard. Naomi took the receipt with shaking fingers and turned away, ready to escape. But Marquise didn't move. He stood there, eyes locked on the floor, swallowing something heavy. Naomi touched his arm gently. "Hey, don't let that get to you," she whispered. Marquise pulled his arm back, not rude, just hurt. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice sounded different now. Colder, like pride had just found a place to live. Naomi pushed her cart outside, trying to breathe. She sold 2 waters to students and forced smiles, but her chest felt tight. Then it happened. A loud crack. Naomi's cooler lid snapped at the hinge when she tried to lift it. The top fell sideways, and ice water spilled onto the sidewalk. Sachets slid out, splitting open. Lemonade leaked into the dust. Students stepped back, groaning and laughing as her entire day's hustle drowned in seconds. Naomi stood frozen, staring at the mess like it was her life spilling out again, and that was when a voice spoke calmly from behind her. "Ma'am, you okay?" Naomi turned and saw Jordan Reed, a hard-working young black man in a work uniform, holding a bus pass in one hand. He wasn't smiling at her pain. He looked genuinely concerned, like he saw her as human. He bent down to help pick up what he could. "This happens," he said gently. "Let me help you." Naomi shook her head fast, embarrassed. "No, it's okay. I got it." Jordan paused. "You don't have to carry everything alone." Naomi forced a small smile and looked away. "I'm used to it." As Jordan stepped back, Naomi's phone buzzed in her pocket. She wiped her hands, checked the screen, and her heart dropped. A text from an unknown number. "Payment due tonight. Don't make me come looking for you." Naomi's fingers went cold. That same evening, Naomi Brooks sat on the edge of her bed, with the broken cooler lid beside her like a bad sign. The text message kept glowing in her mind even after she locked her phone. "Payment due tonight. Don't make me come looking for you." Naomi didn't have to guess who it was. Everybody in Cedar Heights knew the name behind messages like that. His name was Duke Hargrove, a local moneylender who smiled in daylight and collected in darkness. He wasn't loud, but he was feared. If you owed Duke, you didn't sleep peacefully. Naomi exhaled slowly, then stood up. She grabbed the little money she had left, tucked it deep inside her hoodie pocket, and whispered a quick prayer. "God, please, just let me get home." Outside, the neighborhood lights flickered like they were tired too. Naomi pushed her cart carefully, even though her cooler was half useless now. She sold 2 last waters near the corner store, then turned toward home, counting her steps, trying not to look nervous. Across town, Denise Carter was pacing her small living room with her hands on her head. Marquise had barely spoken since the bursar's office humiliation. He sat on the couch with his backpack already packed. "If I don't go tomorrow, it's fine," Marquise said flatly. "I'm not begging nobody." Denise's voice cracked. "Baby, please. Naomi is trying." Marquise's eyes flashed. "Trying is not enough. Everybody saw me today, Ma. Everybody." That sentence hit Denise like a slap because she heard what was growing inside her son, pride mixed with pain. Back on Naomi's street, the night got quieter, too quiet. Naomi was almost home when she heard fast footsteps behind her. She turned slightly, just enough to catch movement. 2 teenage boys rushed her. "Yo, give it up!" one of them snapped. Naomi froze. "Please, I don't have much." But they didn't care. One yanked her cart handle, the other grabbed at her hoodie pocket. Naomi tried to pull back, and the cart tipped. Water sachets rolled into the street. Then her pocket tore. Her money, Marquise's money, spilled out. Naomi dropped to her knees instinctively, reaching for the bills and coins like she could gather her whole purpose back into her hands. But one boy snatched the cash and sprinted off. The other kicked the cart once, just because he could, then ran after him. Naomi sat on the pavement shaking, no screaming, no dramatic yelling, just silence, the kind that comes when your heart is too broken to make sound. A car pulled up fast. It was Keisha Lane, Naomi's best friend, bold, protective, and always ready to fight for Naomi when Naomi wouldn't fight for herself. Keisha jumped out in slides. "Naomi, what happened?" Naomi's lips trembled. "They took it. All of it." Keisha looked down at the spilled sachets, then up at Naomi's face, and her eyes went hard. "Who was it?" Naomi shook her head. I don't know. Keisha clenched her fists. I'm gonna find out. But Naomi grabbed Keisha's wrist. No, please, I can't handle more trouble. Keisha swallowed anger like poison, then helped Naomi stand. We're going to Pastor Grant. Minutes later, inside New Hope Chapel, Pastor Elijah Grant listened quietly as Naomi explained. He didn't panic. He didn't blame her. He simply closed his eyes for a moment like he was asking God for wisdom. Then he said, We'll raise what we can by morning. I'll call a few people. Keisha cut in, bitter. And if it's not enough, Marquise gets put out. Naomi gets threatened. Everybody loses. Naomi stared at the floor. I don't know what to do. Pastor Grant placed a hand gently on her shoulder. When the road splits, Naomi, choose the path that keeps you alive. Naomi's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text. It was a call. Naomi answered with trembling fingers, and a calm voice spoke. Naomi Brooks, Duke Hargrove said, like he had been watching her life. I heard you had a rough night. Naomi's breath caught. Duke, please, he cut her off. Listen carefully. You owe me. If you don't bring my money by tomorrow evening... His voice stayed smooth. You'll regret it. Naomi's knees almost gave way. Keisha stared at her face and knew instantly this wasn't just about school fees anymore. This was danger. The next morning came too fast, like the night hadn't even finished. Naomi Brooks woke up with her chest tight and her mind racing. Duke Hargrove's warning still rang in her ears, and the memory of the robbery still sat on her skin like dirt she couldn't wash off. She dressed quietly, trying not to wake anyone, and stepped into the kitchen to count what little money she had left. It wasn't enough, not for Duke, not for Marquise's school payment, not for anything. She whispered, God, please, and rubbed her face hard, trying to push strength back into herself. Before she could even leave the apartment, her phone rang. It was her cousin, voice shaking. Naomi, it's Grandma Loretta. Naomi's stomach dropped. Loretta Brooks was Naomi's grandmother, the woman who raised her with tough love and Sunday prayers, the woman who always said, don't let life turn you into a bitter person. If Loretta was in trouble, it meant something serious. She collapsed. Her cousin rushed on. We're at the clinic. You need to come. Naomi grabbed her keys, then froze mid-step when she saw the receipt from the school on the table, the reminder of what was due today, the deadline day. If Marquise didn't pay, he would be removed from classes immediately. Naomi stood there, caught between two emergencies, breathing like her lungs couldn't decide what mattered most. Then she made her choice. She ran. Not to the clinic first, to the school. Cedar Heights High looked the same as always. Brick walls, noisy students, morning announcements echoing through the hallway. But Naomi felt like she was walking through a storm alone. She reached the office window again, palms sweating, and slid the money through. Ms. Tisdale wasn't smiling today. She barely looked at Naomi as she counted. This doesn't clear the balance, she muttered. I know, Naomi said, voice low. But it keeps him in, right? Ms. Tisdale stamped the paper hard. For now. Naomi grabbed the receipt and ran out without saying thank you. Her heart was pounding like she had stolen something. She didn't even see Marquise in the hallway. She didn't have time. When she finally reached the clinic, the smell of disinfectant hit her like a slap. Her cousin waved her down, eyes red. Naomi rushed into the small room and saw her grandmother lying on a narrow bed, looking smaller than Naomi had ever seen her. Loretta's eyes were open, but they looked far away, like she was fighting to stay present. Grandma, Naomi whispered, taking her hand. Loretta's fingers twitched weakly. Her lips moved, but the words didn't come out clearly. Naomi leaned closer, desperate to hear anything, advice, a blessing, even a scolding. But Loretta's eyes closed again. and the nurse gently said, "She's very weak. Stress and her blood pressure. It's been building." Naomi's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, "I came as fast as I could." But the truth was, she didn't come as fast as she could. She came after the school. In the hallway, Naomi's aunt appeared, face tight with anger. "So school money is more important than your grandmother's life?" Naomi flinched. Her aunt cut her off. "You're always carrying other people, always bleeding for people who won't even remember you." Naomi's eyes filled. She couldn't explain it. She couldn't say, "I'm trying to save someone's future," because right now it sounded like a weak excuse. Meanwhile, across town, Denise Carter sat on her couch, holding the school's warning letter, hands shaking. She didn't know Naomi had paid again. She only knew time was running out. And Marquise, still bruised from the bursar's office humiliation, walked to school with his head high, telling himself he wouldn't owe anybody. Back at the clinic, Naomi's phone buzzed again, a message from Duke Hargrove. "Tonight, no excuses." Naomi stared at the screen until it blurred. Her grandmother was fighting for breath in the next room. The school deadline had been met only halfway, and now Duke was coming like a shadow. Naomi pressed her forehead against the wall and whispered through tears, "Lord, I can't do this alone." A few days after the clinic scare, Naomi Brooks moved through Cedar Heights like a person running on fumes. She still pushed her cart, she still smiled at customers, but inside she felt hollow, like she had poured out everything and nothing was pouring back. Her grandmother Loretta was stable now, but weak. The doctor warned the family to reduce stress around her, to keep peace in the house. Naomi promised she would, even though her own life was nothing but stress. That afternoon, Naomi stood outside the corner store, counting crumpled bills from ice water sales, when her cartwheel suddenly locked. The metal jerked, the cart tipped slightly, and Naomi hissed in pain as she struggled to steady it. "Hold up! Don't force it!" The voice came from behind her. Naomi turned and saw Jordan Reed again, the young black man who had tried to help her the day her cooler broke. He wore a work uniform and carried himself like someone used to long shifts. His eyes were calm, not curious in a nosy way, more like he genuinely didn't like seeing people struggle alone. Jordan crouched beside the wheel, inspected it, and shook his head. "Your axle's bent." Naomi wiped her palms on her jeans. "It's fine. I'll manage." Jordan looked up at her. "You keep saying that, but managing and suffering aren't the same thing." Naomi didn't answer. She didn't know what to say to a man who spoke like he wasn't afraid of her pain. Jordan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small tool. "My uncle taught me basic repairs. Give me 2 minutes." Before Naomi could protest, he loosened a bolt, straightened the wheel as best as he could, and tightened it again. The cart rolled smoothly. Naomi stared at it, surprised. "You didn't have to do that." Jordan stood up. "I know." He didn't ask her for her number. He didn't stand too close. He didn't act like she owed him anything. He simply nodded toward her cart. "At least now it won't fight you." Naomi's throat tightened, and she hated how close she was to crying over something so small. "Thank you," she managed. Jordan hesitated, then spoke carefully. "You been looking tired. You eating?" Naomi forced a light laugh. "Yeah, sometimes." Jordan didn't laugh back. He reached into the store bag in his hand and pulled out a wrapped sandwich and a bottle of juice. "Take it. No argument." Naomi's pride flared. "I can't." Jordan cut her off gently. "It's food, not disrespect." Naomi stared at the sandwich like it was a gift she didn't know how to accept. She took it slowly, embarrassed. "Thank you," she whispered again. Across the street, Keisha Lane watched the whole thing. Keisha was Naomi's best friend, bold, outspoken, and protective, like an older sister, even though they were the same age. She walked over with her arms folded and eyes sharp. "And who are you?" Keisha asked Jordan, not rude, but not soft either. Jordan nodded politely. "Jordan Reed." Keisha glanced at Naomi, then back at Jordan. "She don't need saving." Jordan's expression stayed calm. "I'm not trying to save her. I'm just helping." Keisha studied him for a second, then leaned closer to Naomi and lowered her voice. "Be careful. People don't help for free out here." Naomi's face tightened. "Keisha." Jordan stepped back to give space. "I'll let y'all talk. Naomi, stay safe." When Jordan walked away, Naomi finally unwrapped the sandwich, and her hands shook as she ate like her body had been waiting for permission to survive. Keisha exhaled hard. "You see how he looked at you?" Naomi frowned. "How?" "Like you matter," Keisha said simply. "Not like a charity case, not like a burden." Naomi stared down at her cart. "I don't have time for anything." Keisha's eyes softened. "That's the problem. You never have time for yourself." Later that evening, Naomi's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She opened it and her blood went cold. "You got till tomorrow. Bring my money. No excuses." Duke Hargrove again. Naomi's stomach twisted. She looked toward the dark street outside her window and felt fear creep up her spine. She had no money, no protection, and she couldn't tell her grandmother because it would raise her blood pressure. Then her phone rang. It was Marquise. Naomi answered quickly. "Marquise?" His voice sounded tense. "Naomi, Mr. Whitaker said I might qualify for a scholarship interview." Naomi's heart lifted for half a second. "That's good." Marquise hesitated. "But I need transport money, like, soon." Naomi closed her eyes slowly, because Naomi already knew what she would do. Even with Duke threatening her, even with her life shaking, she would still try. The next day, Naomi Brooks did what she always did when life demanded more than she had. She sacrificed quietly. Before dawn, she stood in her small room, staring at the only pair of shoes she owned that still looked decent. They weren't fancy, but they were clean, and they made her feel like she still had dignity when she stepped outside. Keisha watched from the doorway, already suspicious. "Why you looking at your shoes like you about to bury somebody?" Naomi didn't smile. "Marquise got a scholarship interview." Keisha's eyes widened. "That's good." Naomi nodded once, then picked up the shoes. "He needs transport money." Keisha's face changed immediately. "Naomi? No." Naomi avoided her eyes. "Keisha, it could change everything." Keisha stepped forward. "And what about Duke? What about your grandma? What about you?" Naomi's voice turned quiet but firm. "If Marquise gets this, he can stop depending on anybody." Keisha laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You keep telling yourself that." Still, Naomi walked to the pawn shop before the sun fully rose. The man behind the counter barely looked at her as he took the shoes and slid a few bills across the glass, like her sacrifice wasn't even worth conversation. Naomi took the money, tucked it away, and walked out in thin sneakers, feet already aching. By midday, Marquise was on the bus heading to the scholarship interview, his suit pressed, his head high. Mr. Raymond Whitaker met him outside the building, straightening Marquise's collar like a proud father. "Listen," Mr. Whitaker said, calm and serious. "When they ask who supported you, tell the truth. Humility opens doors pride can't." Marquise nodded, but his eyes drifted away. Somewhere deep inside, something had shifted. The humiliation at the bursar's office had left a bruise on his ego, and now he wanted a life where nobody could look down on him again. Weeks passed, and the interview turned into a win. Marquise got into college. Denise Carter cried so hard she had to sit down on the kitchen floor. Pastor Grant led a small prayer service at New Hope Chapel. Naomi stood in the back, clapping quietly, tears running down her cheeks, not because she wanted credit, but because the dream had survived. And for a while, things felt lighter. At first, Marquise called Naomi often. He told her about classes, dorm life, and the big campus buildings that looked like a movie. Naomi listened like she was tasting a world she'd never been allowed to enter. But slowly, the calls became shorter, then fewer, then delayed. Naomi would send a message and get a reply hours later. Busy. Talk later. One evening, while Naomi was selling ice water near the transit station, she overheard two college kids laughing about a party at an upscale lounge across town. She didn't know why the conversation bothered her until her phone buzzed and she saw Marquise had posted a photo online. He was dressed sharp, clean haircut, confident smile, standing under bright lights with a group of students who looked like they belonged to money. Naomi's chest tightened. She stared at the photo too long, like she was trying to find the Marquise she used to know. Then Keisha tapped her shoulder. "Naomi, you okay?" Naomi swallowed. "He looks different." Keisha looked at the screen and scoffed. "Different? Girl, he looked like he forgot where he came from." Naomi quickly locked her phone. "Don't say that." Keisha leaned closer. "I'm not cursing him. I'm warning you." Around that same time, Marquise met someone who made college feel like a new world entirely. Her name was Brielle Sinclair, a rich, stylish black girl with a polished smile and expensive taste. Brielle wasn't loud, but she moved like someone used to being chosen. She noticed Marquise because he was smart and ambitious, and because his come-up story sounded inspiring. But Brielle didn't come alone. She came with expectations and with a mother. Dr. Vanessa Sinclair was Brielle's mother, an accomplished, controlling woman who believed image was everything. When Marquise first met her at a campus event, she shook his hand and smiled, but her eyes looked him up and down like she was measuring his worth. "So you're the young man Brielle's been talking about?" Dr. Sinclair said smoothly. "Where exactly are you from?" Marquise felt that old shame rise again. Cedar Heights, ice water money, coins on a counter. He forced a smile. "I'm from the South Side." Dr. Sinclair's smile didn't change, but her tone cooled. Interesting." Marquise laughed softly, trying to sound confident. "But I'm building something bigger." That night, he called Naomi for the first time in weeks. "Naomi," he said, voice distracted, "I might need a little help again." Naomi's heart sank. "For what?" Marquise hesitated. "Just some things. College is expensive." Naomi looked down at her thin sneakers and the aching feet she'd used to get him here. Then her phone buzzed again. Another post. Marquise at a fancy restaurant smiling beside Brielle. Naomi stared at it, stunned. 2 months passed after that first photo, and Naomi Brooks stopped recognizing the version of Marquise Carter the internet kept showing her. He was always dressed sharp now, always smiling under bright lights, always standing next to people who looked like they'd never worried about rent. But Naomi tried to silence her doubts with faith. Maybe he's just adjusting. Maybe he's just busy. Maybe God is still working on him. Then one night, her phone rang at 11:47 p.m. Naomi sat up fast. Calls that late were never good. "Hello?" she whispered. Marquise's voice came through shaky and urgent. "Naomi, I need you." Naomi's heart jumped. "What happened? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he said quickly. "But listen, my graduation is coming up, and the school said I have to clear some charges. If I don't pay it, they won't let me graduate." Naomi gripped her phone tighter. Graduation. The word hit her like a dream, returning. "How much?" she asked. Marquise hesitated, then named a number that made Naomi's stomach drop. Naomi swallowed hard. "Marquise, that's a lot." "I know," he rushed. "But you're the only one I can call. My mom don't have it. I'm doing everything I can, Naomi. Please, just this one last time." Naomi closed her eyes. The phrase "one last time" had followed her for years, like a chain. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll try." The next morning, Naomi didn't even tell her grandmother. She didn't tell her aunt. She didn't want anyone to stop her. She only told Keisha. Keisha's face changed the moment Naomi spoke. "No, Naomi, no, not again." Naomi kept folding laundry, as if she didn't hear her. "It's graduation, Keisha." Keisha stepped closer. "You can't keep lighting yourself on fire to warm somebody who won't even check if you're burning." Naomi's voice cracked. "He's almost there. I can't let him fall at the finish line." Keisha shook her head slowly. "You don't know if he's falling. You just know he's calling you." That same day, Naomi made the kind of sacrifice that didn't look heroic from the outside. It just looked desperate. She sold her phone first, the one item that connected her to everything. The pawnshop man barely looked at her. Then she went home and stared at her small sewing kit, the one Keisha had gifted her months ago, telling her, "One day you'll use this to build your own life." Naomi held the kit for a long time before whispering, "I'm sorry." Then she sold it too. By evening, she still didn't have enough, so she stood outside a grocery store with a handwritten sign. "Need help for school fees. Anything helps." Every coin that dropped into her cup felt like another piece of her pride falling off. A car rolled up slowly. Jordan Reed stepped out. He looked surprised to see her there. His calm eyes softened, and he walked closer. "Naomi, what's going on?" Naomi quickly wiped her face. "Nothing, I'm fine." Jordan stared at her sign. "This doesn't look like fine." Naomi forced a small laugh. "It's just, somebody needs help." Jordan's voice stayed gentle but firm. "You're somebody too." Naomi's eyes watered again, and she looked away. "I can't talk right now, Jordan." Jordan didn't argue. He simply reached into his wallet, placed money into her cup, then lowered his voice. "If you ever want to tell me the truth, I'll listen. No judgment." Naomi nodded, unable to speak, and Jordan left her with something she wasn't used to: respect without pressure. By the end of the night, Naomi had gathered enough. Not comfortably, not proudly, but enough. She sent the money to Marquise immediately, and for the first time in a long time, she waited for a thank you. Marquise replied with only 2 words: "You saved me." Naomi stared at the screen and smiled through tears. "Thank God," she whispered. But the next afternoon, Keisha burst into Naomi's room without knocking, breathing hard like she had been running. Naomi looked up, startled. "Keisha, what?" Keisha shoved her phone forward. "Naomi, look." On the screen was a photo posted by someone from Marquise's circle. Marquise stood in front of a luxury men's store, holding branded shopping bags. He wore a new designer suit, too expensive to be clearance money. Beside him stood Brielle Sinclair, smiling like the world belonged to her, and the caption said, "Big day soon, had to get him right." Naomi's chest went cold, her hands started shaking. No, maybe it's old." Keisha's voice cut through her denial. "It was posted today, Naomi." Naomi sat down slowly, like her legs forgot how to hold her. The money, the phone, the sewing kit, the begging outside the store. All of it. Not for graduation clearance, for an image, for a performance. Naomi's throat tightened until she could barely breathe. She pressed a hand to her mouth to stop a sound from escaping, because if she screamed, she might never stop. And her phone, borrowed now because she had sold hers, buzzed again. It was Marquise calling. Naomi stared at the screen, tears dropping silently. She didn't answer. A week after Naomi Brooks discovered the truth, she still went to work every morning like nothing had happened. She pushed her cart, she sold ice water, She smiled when customers joked with her, but inside something had gone quiet, like her heart had locked itself to survive. Keisha wanted Naomi to stay home on graduation day. "Naomi, don't go," Keisha begged, standing in Naomi's doorway with her arms crossed. "You're walking into a wound." Naomi didn't look up as she folded a borrowed dress neatly on the bed. "I have to see the end," she said, voice low. "If I don't, it'll feel like all of it meant nothing." Keisha's eyes softened, but her jaw stayed tight. "I'm coming with you." That morning, Naomi dressed slowly. The dress wasn't new. She had borrowed it from a church sister, simple, modest, and slightly big at the waist. She pinned it back, then stared into the mirror for a long time. She looked older than 19, not because of wrinkles, but because pain had a way of sitting on a person's face. In her bag, Naomi carried two things, a modest wristwatch and a handwritten letter. The watch wasn't expensive. It was simply something she had saved up for, imagining the moment she would place it in Marquise's hands and say, "Time is yours now. Use it well." The letter was even more personal. It held years of prayers, sacrifice, and quiet love, words she had never said out loud. When Naomi and Keisha arrived at the college campus, the place looked like a different world. Families wore bright outfits, cameras clicked, laughter floated through the air. The stage was decorated, and banners hung from buildings like celebration lived there permanently. Naomi held her bag tighter. Then she saw him. Marquise Carter walked across the lawn in his graduation gown, smiling wide like life had never hurt him. And beside him stood Brielle Sinclair, her hair flawless, her dress expensive, her posture confident. She moved like a girl who had never begged for anything in her life. Naomi stopped walking. Keisha stopped too. "Naomi," she whispered, like she already knew something bad was coming. Marquise didn't see Naomi at first. He was busy greeting people, posing for photos, shaking hands. Then a group gathered around him, and someone handed him a small microphone, laughing like this was fun. Brielle stepped forward, smiling like the center of a spotlight. And then it happened. Right there on the grass, before the ceremony even ended, Marquise dropped to one knee. The crowd exploded. Naomi's stomach turned to ice. Brielle gasped dramatically, one hand covering her mouth, the other holding her phone as if she had been waiting for this moment. Cameras rushed in closer. People screamed, "Say yes!" like it was a movie scene. Marquise looked up at Brielle and said words Naomi couldn't hear clearly over the noise, but she heard enough. "Brielle Sinclair, will you marry me?" Brielle nodded fast, smiling big for the cameras. "Yes!" The crowd cheered so loud Naomi felt it shake her bones. Keisha's hand gripped Naomi's arm. "Naomi, don't look, please." But Naomi couldn't stop looking. Her eyes stayed fixed like her body refused to protect her. Marquise stood up and kissed Brielle's hand, then raised it like a trophy. Everyone clapped like they were celebrating love. Naomi stood there holding the watch and the letter like a joke God forgot to finish. Then Marquise turned and saw her. For a second, his smile faltered. His eyes widened, and the color drained from his face, like he had just been caught stealing. He stepped away from the crowd quickly, walking toward Naomi with urgency. "Naomi," he said, lowering his voice, "what are you doing here?" Naomi stared at him. Her voice came out calm, but it trembled at the edges. "I came to see you graduate." Marquise glanced around nervously. "You shouldn't be here." Keisha stepped forward, furious. "She shouldn't be here? After everything she did for you?" Marquise's eyes flashed. "Keisha, please. Not now. People are watching." Naomi blinked slowly. "So that's what matters," she whispered. "People watching." Marquise reached into his pocket and pulled out cash. He tried to push it into Naomi's hand like he was paying for silence. "Take this," he muttered. "Please, just don't do anything." Naomi's mouth opened slightly in disbelief. She looked down at the cash, then back at him. "You think I came here to beg?" Marquise's voice hardened. "Naomi, you don't understand. This is my life now." Keisha snapped. "No, this is your pride now." Marquise's face twisted with irritation, and the words slipped out before he could stop them. "Naomi chose that small life. That's not on me." The sentence hit Naomi harder than a slap. Her eyes filled instantly, and she took a slow step back, like the ground had shifted under her. Naomi reached into her bag, pulled out the watch and the letter, and held them for a second. Marquise's eyes flickered toward them, and for a brief moment, something like shame crossed his face, but he didn't reach for them. Naomi closed her fingers around the items and lowered her hand. "No," she whispered. "I didn't choose a small life. I chose you." Her voice broke on the last word. Then she turned and walked away. Keisha followed, throwing one last look at Marquise, like she could burn him with her eyes. Behind them, the crowd was still cheering. Cameras were still flashing. Marquise stood frozen, watching Naomi leave, his chest rising and falling like he couldn't breathe. And as Naomi stepped off the campus lawn, her knees finally weakened. She didn't collapse dramatically. She simply sat on the curb, hugging her bag, like it was the only thing keeping her together. Keisha crouched beside her, whispering, "I got you." And that was when a shadow fell across them. Jordan Reed had found her. His voice was quiet. "Naomi, talk to me." Naomi looked up, eyes red and empty. And for the first time, she didn't say she was fine. 3 months after that graduation betrayal, Cedar Heights stopped hearing Marquise Carter's name the way it used to. Before people said it with pride, that boy made it. Now, when his name came up, it came with lowered voices and long pauses, because the truth about a person doesn't always show up immediately. Sometimes it waits until the celebration is over. Marquise and Brielle Sinclair moved fast after graduation. Engagement photos, fancy dinners, big smiles. Everything looked perfect online. But behind those bright pictures, the cracks started forming quietly. It began with a secret. One evening, Marquise came home early to the upscale apartment Brielle's family had arranged. He expected laughter, maybe planning for their next event. Instead, he found Brielle in the kitchen, tense, wiping her face like she had been crying. Her phone was on the counter, buzzing non-stop. Marquise stepped closer. "What's going on?" Brielle didn't answer at first. Her eyes looked scared, not of him, but of being exposed. Then the doorbell rang. Brielle flinched. Marquise opened the door and found a woman standing there with folded arms and sharp disappointment on her face. She introduced herself with a tight voice, like she didn't even want to be there. "My name is Tasha, and we need to talk about Brielle," she said. Brielle's face drained. Marquise looked between them. "Talk about what?" Tasha's voice dropped. "About the child she's been hiding." The words hit the room like a gunshot without sound. Marquise blinked, confused. "What child?" Brielle tried to speak, but her voice broke. "Marquise, Tasha cut in, bitter. "Don't I nothing. You left me raising that baby alone while you built this perfect life." Marquise's chest tightened. He stared at Brielle like she had turned into someone he never knew. Brielle began crying, saying it was complicated, saying her mother forced her to keep it quiet, saying it would ruin everything. And suddenly, Marquise understood what he had really married into. Not love, an image, and images require lies. Marquise didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, feeling the same shame he once felt in the bursar's office. Only now it was louder, heavier. He thought of Naomi and the way she never hid the truth of her struggle, never wrapped herself in fake perfection. But Marquise had already burned that bridge, and karma didn't stop there. A week later, Marquise started coughing. At first, he told himself it was stress, late nights, too much arguing, too much pressure. But the cough didn't leave. It became dry and persistent, stealing his breath in the middle of conversations. He began losing energy. His body felt weak, like it was refusing to carry the weight of the life he had built. Brielle grew distant. She stopped touching him, stopped checking on him. Her affection turned into annoyance. "Can you not do that around my mum?" she hissed one day when Marquise coughed during a family lunch. And that was when Dr. Vanessa Sinclair stepped in like a judge entering a courtroom. She studied Marquise's face, the tired eyes, the cough he tried to hide behind his hand. "This is unacceptable," Dr. Sinclair said calmly. "You need to get it under control." Marquise stared at her. "I'm sick." Dr. Sinclair's tone didn't soften. "Illness is inconvenient, especially right now." Soon after, the diagnosis came. Tuberculosis. It wasn't just a word. It was isolation, medication, weakness, a forced pause on a life Marquise had been sprinting through. And while he battled his health, his career dreams collapsed. A prestigious job offer, one Dr. Sinclair had helped arrange, was suddenly reconsidered. The reason didn't come as a dramatic announcement. It came as quiet rejection. Emails that stopped replying, calls that went unanswered. Then Marquise heard the real rumor. Someone had exposed his lies. Small lies he told to look impressive, stories he exaggerated, moments where he claimed he had no help, erasing Naomi completely from the truth of his journey. Now those same lies were being used to label him as unreliable, and Dr. Sinclair's voice turned colder than winter. "We don't associate with embarrassment," she told Brielle within earshot. "This is not the man I chose." Brielle's love became conditional overnight. She stopped saying "we" and started saying "you." "You're not the man I thought you were. You're ruining my life. You're bringing shame." Marquise sat in a silent room, coughing, staring at the ceiling, realizing the life he chased didn't have warmth, only performance. One rainy afternoon, weak and desperate, Marquise did the one thing pride never wanted him to do. He returned to Cedar Heights. He imagined Naomi still pushing that cart, still giving everything away, still available as a safety net. But when he stepped out of the cab and looked down the street, he froze, because on the corner where Naomi used to sell ice water, there was a new signboard, bold letters, Brooks and Lane Tailoring. Marquise's throat tightened as his cough rose again. He stood there, stunned, realizing karma wasn't only punishment. Sometimes karma was a mirror, and the mirror was showing him that Naomi had risen, without him. The next morning, Marquise Carter stood across the street from the tailoring shop like the building might bite him. The signboard, Brooks and Lane Tailoring, looked too real to be a dream. It was bright, clean, and proud, the kind of sign that meant somebody had stopped surviving and started building. Marquise coughed into his fist, the sound rough and embarrassing. He hated how weak he felt. He hated that he'd returned to Cedar Heights not as a conqueror, but as a man with nothing left to hide behind. He crossed the street slowly and pushed the shop door open. A small bell rang. Inside, the room smelled like fresh fabric and steam. A mannequin stood near the window, wearing a fitted dress. 2 sewing machines hummed like steady music. On the wall, a framed scripture hung above the counter, simple and bold. "Let all you do be done with love." Behind the counter stood Naomi Brooks. For a second, Marquise couldn't breathe. Naomi looked different, not in a flashy way, not like she'd become someone else. She looked settled. Her posture was straighter, her eyes were clearer, the exhaustion was still there, but now it lived beside something stronger, peace. Next to her, Keisha Lane was pinning fabric on a customer, her hands moving fast and confident. She glanced up, saw Marquise, and her face hardened instantly. "Oh, look," Keisha said, voice flat. "The graduate." Naomi didn't react immediately. She simply finished writing something in a notebook, then looked up. Her eyes landed on Marquise and stayed there, quiet, steady, not angry, not excited. Marquise swallowed. "Naomi." Naomi nodded once. "Marquise." He stepped forward, then paused, unsure where he was allowed to stand. His throat tightened, and another cough forced its way out. He tried to hide it, but it only made him cough more. Keisha clicked her tongue. "Now you coughing? Life finally touched you, huh?" "Keisha," Naomi said softly, not as a warning, but as a boundary. Keisha went back to her work, still glaring but silent. Marquise's voice came out hoarse. I didn't know you had this." Naomi glanced around the shop like she was seeing it too. "It's new. We opened 2 months ago." 2 months. While he was drowning in the life he chose, Naomi had been building. Marquise's eyes dropped to the counter, and he noticed a small jar with a label. Community Fund. He swallowed again, shame rising in waves. He remembered Naomi begging outside the grocery store. He remembered her selling everything. "I messed up," Marquise said finally, the words cracking as they left his mouth. Naomi didn't deny it. She didn't argue. She waited. Marquise took another step forward. I was stupid. I let pride get inside me. I didn't want people to look down on me anymore, and I thought the only way to escape that was to become someone else." Naomi's eyes remained calm. "So you erased me?" Marquise flinched, like the truth stung. "Yes." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. "I brought something. It's not much, but..." Keisha laughed sharply. "Not much? Boy, you offered her hush money at your graduation." Marquise's face tightened, but he didn't fight back. He looked back at Naomi. "I'm not here to buy you. I'm here because I'm sorry. I'm sick, Naomi. My life is falling apart." Naomi's gaze softened just slightly, but she didn't step closer. "I heard." Marquise's voice dropped. Brielle wasn't what I thought. And her family. When things got hard, they switched up. They treated me like I was disposable." Naomi didn't look surprised. She just looked sad, like she had already mourned this version of him a long time ago. Marquise's eyes filled. "I came back because I realized the only real love I ever had was you." Keisha stopped what she was doing. Even the sewing machine seemed to sound louder in the silence. Naomi didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She didn't melt. Instead, she reached under the counter and pulled out a small box. Marquise's eyes widened. "What is that?" Naomi opened it. Inside was the modest wristwatch Marquise never took on graduation day. Beneath it, neatly folded, was the letter. "I kept them," Naomi said quietly, "not because I was waiting for you to come back, but because they reminded me of who I was, before I learned boundaries." Marquise's lips trembled. "Naomi, please." Naomi raised a hand gently, stopping him. "I forgive you, Marquise." His shoulders dropped in relief, like he'd been holding his breath for months, but Naomi's next words landed heavier. "I forgive you," she repeated. "As a person, but I can't be your partner." Marquise blinked, as if his mind refused to understand. "Why?" "Naomi, we can start over. I can change. Naomi's voice stayed soft, but firm like steel wrapped in velvet. "Starting over with you would mean returning to a version of myself God had to heal. I can't go back." Marquise's tears fell now. He covered his face, coughing between sobs. "I'm so sorry." Naomi stepped from behind the counter and placed the watch box in his hands. "Take it," she said. "Not as a reward, as a reminder. Time is precious. Don't waste it destroying people who love you. Marquise held the box like it weighed 100 pounds. The shop bell rang again. Jordan Reed walked in. Naomi looked up, and the shift in her eyes was subtle but undeniable. Comfort, safety. Jordan paused when he saw Marquise. His face stayed calm, but his attention moved immediately to Naomi, checking her expression before anything else. Marquise noticed that. The way Jordan stood, the way Naomi didn't shrink. Jordan spoke gently. "You okay?" Naomi nodded. "I'm okay." Keisha smirked under her breath like she'd been waiting for this moment. Marquise's throat tightened. "So, it's him." Naomi didn't deny it. "Jordan showed me what consistent love looks like. He didn't ask me to beg. He didn't make me feel small." Marquise swallowed hard, shame burning. He looked at Jordan, then back at Naomi. "I really lost you." Naomi's voice was quiet. "You let me go when you chose pride over honor." Marquise stood there for a long moment, coughing lightly, eyes red. Finally, he nodded once, like a man accepting the truth he couldn't rewrite. "I hope you're happy," he whispered. Naomi answered without hesitation. "I am healing, and that is happiness." Marquise walked out of the shop with the bell ringing behind him, the watchbox clutched in his hand, the weight of his choices following him down the street. Inside, Naomi exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for years. Jordan stepped closer, voice low. "You did good." Naomi nodded, eyes shining. "I chose myself." And for the first time in a long time, Naomi's future felt like it belonged to her. Before we wrap up, let's talk about what this story really taught us. Because this wasn't just drama, this was a life lesson. Sometimes, the people who carry you in your darkest season are the same people you'll be tempted to ignore when your life finally gets bright. But hear this clearly. Gratitude is not optional. If someone watered your dreams when you had nothing, you don't repay them with silence, pride, or shame. And for everyone like Naomi, your kindness is beautiful. But remember this too, sacrifice needs wisdom. Helping someone should not erase your own future. Real love is loyal. Real love is consistent. Real love doesn't show up only when the cameras are rolling. Now tell me something. Who was your favorite character in this story? Was it Naomi Brooks, the girl who sold ice water and still kept her heart clean? Was it Keisha Lane, the friend who stood like a shield and refused to watch Naomi get used? Was it Jordan Reed, the man who saw Naomi's worth and stayed steady? Or was it Marquise Carter, because his story is a warning to anyone who lets pride ruin their destiny? And be honest with me. Do you like stories like this? The kind that feel real, hit deep, and leave a lesson behind? If you do, I want you to say it in the comments, because I'm here to tell stories that touch hearts, not stories that waste time. Also, I want to do something special for you, because you are the reason this channel keeps growing. Drop your name in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I'm going to choose one lucky person and use your name as a main character in our next video, along with a few other strong characters inspired by your comments. And if you have a true story you want me to tell, something you've lived through, something you witnessed, or something that changed your life, share it in the comments too. I read them, and if it fits our storyline, we will use it as an inspired story in an upcoming episode. Thank you for the love, the support, and the time you give me. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe, because it helps this channel reach more people who need stories like this. This is Mr. Hope, and I'll see you in the next story.